Francesca Albanese is the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, and she has recently given a speech to the Australian Press Club. In the question and answers session, a Guardian journalist named Daniel Hurst asked her this.
I couldn't help but being tripped up by the very ending of your speech where you said that ending Jewish-Israeli domination would be rehumanising acts for them as well. I just want to ask whether that sort of comment is helpful in the current climate, talking about ending Jewish-Israeli domination. You've applied it to that particular context, but you don't think the word domination has a wider connotation outside that context.
What do you mean?
Talking about Israeli-Jewish domination.
Meaning, are you asking me in Israel?
Well, the phrase jumped out at me at the end of your speech, and I'm just wondering if the trope of domination
No, it's not a trope. It's really real. So it seems not to understand what I'm saying. There is an apartheid regime. No, I'm serious. There is an apartheid regime. It's domination. This is not a trope. This is international law. I encourage you to read the Apartheid Convention because it talks about racial domination. And this is what I'm talking about. It might be a trope into the way you interpret it. But I'm using domination in a strictly legal sense.
Thank you very much for
You're welcome.
my questions.
I mean, he had no follow-up, did he? I mean, he was very much put in his place. And how embarrassing! There is a horrific war on Gaza. You are speaking to the UN Special Rapporteur on Palestinians, and or you can go, "Oh, I heard you say domination. Oh, that sounds a bit dodgy. I know anti-Semitism is in the news at the moment. Do you feel bad that you said domination? Do you think that could be a trope?" Like, no. This is what a ridiculous question. And she put him down so effectively. And she was absolutely right to. Now, as she said, racial domination isn't a trope. It's a legal term included within the 1975 UN Convention on Apartheid. Now, this is the relevant passage. For the purpose of the present convention, the term the crime of apartheid, which shall include similar policies and practices of racial segregation and discrimination as practiced in Southern Africa, shall apply to the following inhuman acts committed for the purpose of establishing and maintaining domination by one racial group of persons over any other racial group of persons and systematically oppressing them. Now, the convention then lists a number of actions which are understood to promote racial domination. We also know that the crime of intentional and systematic racial domination is being committed by Israel. Now, this is the front cover of the 2022 Amnesty report, which judged Israel to be guilty of apartheid. So you can see there, Israel's apartheid against Palestinians, cruel system of domination and crime against humanity. So you've got the Guardian journalist who opens that and think, oh, Israel committing apartheid against Palestinians. That sounds kind of boring. Oh, but I can see the word domination. Oh, and we're talking about Israel. Oh, there could be a headline there. That sounds very interesting. Someone from the UN said that Israel might be dominating another racial group, that Jews in Israel are dominating another racial group. Now, as the UN rapporteur said, that's not a trope. That's what's happening, right? It's material. This is not just in the realms of discourse. There is discrimination and domination of people in Israel because they are not Jews, right? Jews in Israel, it is a racial group. There is racial domination between Jews and non-Jews in Israel. Rivka, this idea that sort of just anything is a trope, right? Powerful Jews is a trope, so you can't talk about how Jews have power in Israel. You know, it's like if you were to talk about South African apartheid without being able to say that white people have more power in South Africa than everyone else.
Right. And I mean, obviously, this environment in which it's impossible to speak about Israeli Jewish domination. Albanese was incredibly precise with her language. She didn't just say Jewish. It was Hurst who abstracted the idea of Jews per se from what she was saying. So in a way, it's Hurst's own unconscious anti-Semitic biases that we should be questioning. But, you know, this idea that it's impossible to critique Israeli Jewish domination without being accused of anti-Semitism is a situation that obviously Israel has constructed quite deliberately to insulate itself from criticism. It's also so evidently not a trope. It's enshrined in Israeli law. You know, the 2018 nation state law literally says that the right to exercise national self-determination in the state of Israel is unique to Jewish people. only Jewish people have the right to self-determine in the state of Israel. And Jewish domination is inscribed in Israeli law. It's inscribed in the convention of the ruling party, of Bibi's Likud party, that between the river and the sea, there will be only Israeli Jewish sovereignty. Coincidentally rhymes. Perhaps they should be using it as their chants on their marches. This idea that that Hearst is kind of suggesting, and I think the kind of interaction that you see between them shows how deeply removed journalists' understanding of the situation is from the material reality. We're continually told, criticism of Israel is legitimate if it's well informed, if it's reasonable. There is no one, perhaps on this planet, who knows more about the situation on the ground than Francesca Albanese at this moment. She is the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied territories. She knows so much about the kind of regime of racial domination that Israel is maintaining. And yet, when she attempts to speak about it, she's still smeared as anti-Semitic. It shows how impossible the discourse around Israeli policy, even when it's forensically detailed, even when it's extremely well informed and highly specific in its language, Israeli Jews, not Jews per se, it's impossible to launch any criticism of Israel in this environment, in a Western media environment that extends clearly not just from the UK to the US, but all the way to Australia.